Hi, everybody. Well, we just got back from Israel yesterday after attending the funeral of our dear friend Shimon Sarfatti. I just wanted to share something that Karen Berg spoke about Shabbat afternoon as part of the third meal of the Shabbat. And Karen related this idea to Shimon and part of what we could learn from him. And of course, it's a difficult time right now. It's taken its toll on so many people, and I think what we all need to do is take what we can learn and understand and apply to our life. It's making a lot of us think, awakening a lot of fears. While we certainly don't have the answers, I mean, we know very little, but we do know that the universe has its own perfect order of things, and sometimes we do need to accept that we don't understand why things happen. So part of what Karen talked about was the idea of calculations. And in the month of Virgo, which we find ourselves in, which we understand is the preparation for Rosh Hashanah, Virgo is all about calculating. Now, let's understand what is the meaning of calculating. Calculations. In Hebrew, cheshbonot, calculating. So generally, we have a tendency to calculate with people, with situations, when something pertains to us, and it will affect us in some way. That is how we will relate to a person, how something will relate to our comfort or not comfort. We will create calculations about the thing, and it will limit us from doing or not doing. So when we begin to figure people out, we look at what's good about them, or more accurately, we look at what's not good about them. We begin to already make calculations, how we will relate to them, what we should say, what we shouldn't say, how we will act, what we'll be ready to do or not do, if we'll deal with them, if we won't deal with them. So we make calculations on people. We make calculations on situations as well. If we need to say something, if we don't need to say something, talk, not talk, be involved in a situation, not. We'll make calculations. And generally, all these calculations will relate to how that situation relates to me personally, how it will affect my comfort, how it will affect my money, how it will affect maybe my health. So we are actually full of calculations. And generally, these calculations that we make about things will limit us because it causes us to think. And when we begin to think too much about something, generally, we will end up not doing it, especially when it's dealing with something that requires our action. It requires our participation. It requires some energy that we need to invest. Those are the times when we will calculate the most. Okay? So our calculation really is determined by how much it affects me personally. How much it affects me personally. Now, what's interesting is that there's another side of calculation, and that's when it comes to doing something which is maybe reactive on my part. As an example, when we have an opportunity to get angry, something bugs us, something upsets us, we become reactive sometimes right away. Or we're jealous about something, we'll right away react to it. Whenever something triggers us, we react to it. In fact, the very nature of the concept of a reactive behavior means I did not calculate. And that's the time actually when I should calculate. So when it's about me being a reactive person, that's the time when I should actually begin calculations. And those calculations may look something like, wait a second, why am I getting angry? Is this worth wasting my energy? Is this worth me connecting to some form of negativity? Is this worth me being reactive and creating negativity for myself? What should I do? How should I act? How the creative part of me? How would I act if I was really using the creative part of me? If I was using the light, if I was using love, would I react in the same way? That requires calculation too. And those are all related to judgment. Calculating is related to judgment. And this is that month. This is the month, and this week specifically has a lot of energy of judgment in it, meaning that we can very easily become judges on other people, start calculating and figuring them out. And generally, it will not be in a positive way, because the month of Virgo can begin to show us what's wrong with everybody and make us even blind to our own spiritual work. And that's a trap for us, because this is a month where we really need to become totally introspective, to look inside and to see what's not clean about ourselves. This is the month for that. And this specifically is a very strong week for that, to use our eyes in that way, to use our ears in that way with the things that we hear, to use our mouth that way with the things that we say, even our nose, because our nose represents how we perceive things as well. Just like when we say something smells bad, we could also say something smells good, even though we don't say that much. So, and so how does this all relate? Because we know, Shimon Sarfatti was the type of person who rarely made calculations, if ever, when it came to what was required of him. And I'm making that distinction because Shimon was, when he would go out working, and I remember in the old days, and there's so many stories about Shimon, he would just point himself in a direction and go without thinking. Which way should I turn? What door should I knock on? Because in the old days we used to knock on doors, and that's how we would spread the words of Kabbalah, and we would ask also for donations to help print the books and Zohar and the Rav's books and teachings. And so, in fact, Shimon Sarfatti was the one who came up with that entire idea, because before that it was by lists, just like many organizations would receive lists of donors, people who were known to be givers and wanted to help fund schools and so on. And the staff members of the center would go according to lists and knock on the doors that way. And Shimon one day said, no, let's do it differently. Let's just go, because you never know who you're going to meet. You never know who we're going to be able to spread some light to. And from that moment forward, a new concept began called Harisha. Harisha literally in Hebrew means to plow, like plowing the fields, but that's a great part of what built the center. And I remember when I used to go Harisha, it was a very, very uncomfortable thing. I call it the thing that I love to hate, because there was such a tremendous amount of light that we could even ask for miracles and get them in those days with that door-to-door, because it was such an uncomfortable thing on behalf of spreading light. And I remember every morning waking up, I didn't want to do it, and I had to fight with myself to go out there. But invariably, I would come home with miracles and stories and miracles to tell. Shimon was the one who started all of that. So that was his consciousness of not calculating which door to knock on, which block to go down, who to speak with, who not to speak with. No, he just went. Again, just with blinders on, would just go with the mission. Mission is to do what the Rav and Karen wanted him to do, spread the light. That's it. To do the desires of his teachers and to the best of his ability. And that's a tremendous lesson. In fact, I remember one very famous story about Shimon where he just knocked on the door of a guy, and the guy happened to invite him in. And long story short, but the guy happened to be a gangster. In fact, he was a hitman, and he showed Shimon a gun. And he said, you know, before you came in to speak with me, because Shimon spent some time there talking to him about Kabbalah and explaining to him about the light, he said, before you came in here, you know, I was on my way out and I was about to kill somebody. And you changed it all for me. You changed it. And because of you, I'm not going to go out and kill somebody. And it's a crazy, crazy story. But for Shimon, it was an everyday occurrence. That's who Shimon was. But Shimon also, when we discuss the idea of calculations, when it came to judging other people, or when it came to, you know, as we would call it in the center, giving someone the business, which means helping to tell them what they need to do to fix or correct, Shimon had lots of calculations. He would calculate how to say, what to say, if to say, and to say it with so much love that you knew you were being constructively criticized, but you didn't care. You would welcome it and be able to hear it and accept it because he was doing it for you, not for himself. And that's another huge lesson on calculation. There's a time to calculate, and there's a time, of course, not to calculate. Most of our life, we need to learn how not to calculate. Since most of our lives are about ourselves and what's comfortable for me, what's not comfortable for me, how it affects me, how it won't affect me, what I'll get, what I won't get, we're busy calculating and thinking all the time. How to deal with our fears, how to deal with our worries, and what we don't trust, and how to control, and all these things. I mean, it's almost amazing sometimes we have any time left to do anything constructive. A life of calculations. Instead of just going with it. Go with the light. Trust the light. And I think one of the main features that Shimon had, which we can all benefit from and we can all learn from, and in this time, which is still his Shiva, in the 7 days preceding his burial, that light is very strong for us to be able to ask for that. And I'm sure he can help us to ask to be able to be less calculating, or without calculations on other people, especially this month and this week, and without calculations in our life. And the way you get that is from trusting, as he did. Trust. Just go all the way. Let go. Trust. Trust the universe. Trust the light. Trust the Creator with whatever it is. Trust with our children. Trust with our life. Trust with a decision. As long as you've done your part, let go. Give it to the Creator. Let the Creator deal with the rest. Don't be busy with a headache. Don't be busy with thinking. Don't be busy with calculating everything to death, thinking everything to death. No. We need to stop that stuff, because it not only does it limit us, but it limits all the people around us in our life. But the opposite is also true. There is a time to calculate, and when we are about to be reactive, we should calculate it to death. We should think. We should understand the situation. We should zoom out, try to see things from a greater perspective, to see What does this mean for me in the greater scheme of things? Why is this in my movie? That requires some heavy calculating in order to stop ourselves from being reactive beings and to stop ourselves from going into anger and reacting on that, going into judgment and acting on that, and going into whatever negative emotion it might be and acting upon that. That requires a lot of calculations. And this month and this week we should calculate ourselves, but not other people. Make the calculations to understand all the things that we've created, which are negative this year, and begin our process of introspection to cleanse. Where was I coming from? What was I thinking? To feel to number one, to stop doing the things once we understand what they are. Stop creating that negativity. Number two, to feel sorry, to feel remorse about the things and the people that I affected when I acted that way. And number three is to agree with myself that I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to go to that place anymore. I want to change it. I want to replace it with a different type of behavior. So this is where we should be thinking, certainly this week and the entire month of Virgo, because we are all preparing for the cosmic event of Rosh Hashanah, where we will be able to create a new life, a new cassette for ourselves. And in spite of the illusions that we see around us, and I know a lot of us can be very confused at this time, because the center, the Rav, would speak about immortality, and certainly all the teachers, including Shimon, would speak, and we teach about going to the level of immortality. So we're confused. How come we see great people leaving, like our teacher, the Rav, and now Shimon? What is it all about? And so, of course, we don't have answers to every question, but what we do know is righteous people do operate by different rules. And we know that sometimes people leave after they've completed their process in this world, and they're called from above. And I'm sure, as most of us, I'm sure, are, that Shimon was called to assist and help bring about an end to the chaos and the pain and suffering that we all experience and that people experience, and to assist the Rav in this goal and mission. And so make no mistake, we should not make the mistake of thinking, well, so the whole concept of immortality is, where do we put that? No, it doesn't change. That doesn't change. We're working towards that because that's a step in our spiritual process. The sign that we've reached our goal of that correction of enough negativity, that we've reached the critical mass, is that we've achieved that death does not need to occur. And we know by tzaddikim, by righteous people, the Zohar says, they do not die. They change levels. Their body may disappear, but they certainly do not die. And conversely, that when someone is only focused on themselves, or evil people, even when they're alive, they're considered dead. So we understand that this idea is not gone. We are still very much, all of us, working towards immortality. We should think about it, talk about it more, and understand this is part of our spiritual work. It's a goal we need to achieve, to remove that negative force once and forever. And it all begins by us looking inside ourselves and cleansing out our own individual egos, our negativities, our own reactive consciousness, and by getting closer to that place where we don't make calculations on other people, and we get to a level of being able to truly trust and go wherever the light takes us, in whichever direction.